Welcome to the Be My Guest podcast, where we interview inspiring entrepreneurs who share their stories and their insights and much, much more. You made a great choice tuning in today to the Be My Guest podcast. Welcome and enjoy the show. Was I muted there? Sorry. So another episode of Be My Guest here with a great guest for you guys today. I'm going to bring our guests on now. This is Joel Oliver, and he's got a great company. Joel, why don't you take a moment here before I do? Thank you for coming on the podcast. Why don't you share your business, what you do, how you got started, and a little bit of background about you?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Frankie. Appreciate the opportunity. So I am the owner of East Coast Studio. It's a podcast production company focused on health and wellness type entrepreneurs with podcasts. So the goal is to help them podcast as easily as possible because they have better things to do, but they're enjoying the benefits of podcasting. So they can go work on their business. We make that podcasting process as simple as possible for them. How I get started, I originally was doing voiceover work online as a freelancer. That was my first foray into making money online. And I thought that was pretty cool. It was exciting to see some money flow in from the internet. And I thought, how do I do more of this? And I actually had a background in audio engineering. And I was just looking at the marketplace to see what could I help with here? What else might I be able to offer? This was around 2015. And I saw podcasting was obviously a thing by then, but it was becoming more and more popular. So I thought, well, I can do that. Let me start editing podcasts. And it just kind of took off from there. Got busier and busier, started to grow into a business beyond just freelancing. And that was, 8 or 9 years ago at this point. And it's just grown into something much bigger. And that's where we're at today.
Yeah, obviously we are big components and believers of podcasts and getting our content out there, and obviously meeting great people as well through these platform. Now, let me ask you this: your podcast studio, I would assume it's for in person in the area in which you work, right? Is it something that you do? Do you work with people that do virtual podcasts that are not there?
This has actually all been remote. It's always been all remote. I very rarely meet a client in person. If we just happen to be in the same city, we'll connect. But for the most part, it's just, it has nothing to do with location at all.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we do the same thing as far as remotely working with people. As far as doing the interviews, people are like, "Well, where's your studio at?" Well, all you have to do is have a good webcam, a decent mic, and we'll just bring the studio to you, so to speak. So that's great. So, how long ago did you get started with this?
Yeah, it was kind of a progressive thing. I think I started the voiceover around 2014. Then probably within the year after that, I started the freelancing of the audio edit podcast production. And by 2018, I officially formed a company. And so I've been doing it ever since.
Awesome. So sounds like you've been really scaling it up. Now, is this something that you do yourself, or you, as an entrepreneur, has you built the business where you got some support staff now, or how's that look for you as far as the growth of your business?
Yeah, well, we've got a fairly big team. I guess it's all relative, but to me, it's about 10 or 12 people or so.
Nice.
And it can vary depending, we're growing, but originally it was just me. I was just doing the editing myself. And then eventually I was spending my entire day and night working on audio editing, which was fine. I was happy just to be making money, but couldn't scale very well, obviously. And when it comes to podcasting, if you think of dialogue editing, which you just have to go through the episode and listen and make edits to it, there's only so much one person can do of that in a day. So that was one of the first things that we had to get help with, was other people, just to free up more of my time. But yeah, at this point, we've got a team of 10 or so that's mostly editors. I've got some support for show notes as well, and making the social media clips. And then I'm still at the center of things. I'm still heavily involved. That's just something I believe in. I'm not looking to make a business where I'm just on the beach all day and I'm not doing anything with it. Not really my personal style. But yeah, we definitely have some help.
Yeah. So since 2000, you said 18, you've been going here. How much would you be able to share that your company's grown from where you started at to now, and maybe what challenges were you first facing when you first got started?
Hmm. Well, challenges. Yeah, luckily when we started, I was doing a lot of work through an online marketplace, so I didn't have to worry about clients so much. The work was just flowing in. In podcasting, it was just a good time to be in, so people were looking for help with it. So that was great initially.
Good.
And that continued for quite a while. Like whether it was referrals or just organic traffic, we were just getting new sales, new clients, which was amazing. And I was grateful for that. But now in the last couple of years, we've wanted to take more control of that because obviously times are changing. Whether people need a company like this, their needs are changing. There's more competition in the marketplace. So we've tried to be more proactive about actually growing. That's what led us to rebranding, going down the path of the health and wellness niche. And we started putting out content online. We're starting a mailing list. So that's one of the big changes is we were pretty fortunate at first to just grow organically to a certain extent. And that was great, multiple six figures. But we want to be able to take control of that and decide our outcome rather than just waiting to see what happens to us. So that's kind of one of the shifts that we've had to make now is being proactive about our marketing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about podcasting. I think there's a stat out there, and I don't know I can't remember exactly, but I think it's like if you do more than 6 episodes, you do more than 80% of people out there because they just give up early. What do you think what do you think the reason is behind that? And, what would be a good reason why you should have a podcast other than just trying to get your name out there and your story?
Hmm.
What's your idea behind that?
Yeah, it's hard to say specifically why that number is so high in terms of people that give up, but I think expectations and perhaps not realizing how much work it takes. Like like anything, building a business, for example, it takes dedication and time. So if you expect to just start a podcast and then within a few weeks you're going to have a big audience or clients, it's just not going to work like that. It's
Right.
going to you got to like when you start, be dedicated for at least a year. Know that you're going to do it for a minimum of a year, and that's just to really get things going. And you got to understand the work required, perhaps a budget. I mean, I think it's a better thing to outsource your editing and the show notes and that type of thing. But even if you're doing it yourself, that's a lot of time. So I think that's a huge one. Is just not really understanding the commitment that's required, and people just get in, they just give up. Maybe they don't have the proper workflow in place where they're doing all the work themselves, and it just becomes a burden. And they skip 1 week, and then before you know it, they just fell off. They fell off the wagon, and they're not doing it at all anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that happens. What was the second part of your question?
Yeah. What would you tell people of why they should start a podcast if they're thinking about it, or why they should do more than 6 episodes at least so they get their name out there? What would
Hmm.
your purpose behind it be?
Yeah, I mean there are totally a lot of benefits to podcasting, whether that's networking with other people, growing your audience, generating leads and revenue for your business. I mean there is a ton of benefits. If someone's going to start or they're considering and they want to know like what should I think about so I don't become one of those people who starts it and then stops, because why
Right.
even waste your time starting if you're not going to continue with it? So the things that I like to suggest considering are, first of all, your goals. Why do you want to do it? If you think it's for overnight fame, well, don't do it. It's like don't even start.
You're right.
But we want to have a clear strategy here that you feel, hey, over the next year I can do this consistently, and it's going to be a great marketing tool for my business, or I'm going to meet a lot of cool people. I'm going to learn a lot. That's okay. Those are great reasons. The next one would be the budget. Do you have the time and or the money to dedicate to this so you can do it over the long haul for a minimum of a year? If not, if you just don't think you can keep up, then that's another reason to not do it. And finally, would be that commitment is like,
Right.
I'm going to do this for a minimum of a year. I have enough people to talk to, or I have topics. I understand the work involved, and I'm committed to starting it and completing it for at least that amount of time. So those are the three things I always suggest thinking about before you start.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit of practicality when it comes to launching your podcast. What would you recommend someone distribute their podcast to? Is it just YouTube or the Spotify's of the world, or what would your suggestion be as far as that's concerned?
Hmm. there are pretty standard platforms these days. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, there are a whole bunch of others. A lot of those just piggyback off of the bigger ones. So you don't need to go and submit yourself to all these little individual apps. They'll just grab it from one of the big sources. So definitely those. We have lost some, like we lost Google Podcasts, that was there for a while, but that's kind of folded into YouTube. And so that started a whole new thing, because you can consider, do I need video or not? Well, you don't even need to think about that, because you can just put an audio only podcast on YouTube if you choose, but you need to be on there. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube are definitely the biggest ones these days, and it's all free to be on them. So there's not really a big consideration in thinking about what should I do. It's just, if you're going to have a podcast, you make sure you're on those platforms, which is pretty simple. And, from there, it's a matter of promoting it yourself generally to build the audience.
Do you recommend for most people to do a video version of the podcast or just audio?
I like to at least record video at the bare minimum for social media clips, because we've all seen those these days. People, whether it's an individual or two people on screen talking, that's a great way to promote your podcast and put bite-sized clips out there into the world and get a bigger ROI from your podcast. If you just do the episode and you put that up on the platforms, well, you're missing opportunities by not doing short form and putting that on other platforms. So yeah, I recommend recording video for at least that. Now, the long form, whether you need an actual recording of your full podcast on YouTube or Spotify in video form, doesn't fully matter. There are increasing trends where people like video, but at the same time, if you're just kind of sitting next to each other, there's not a big need for an audience member to see that. They might put it on, but I don't think there's a huge benefit either way. Like if you have a lot of visuals or something in your show that you need to show people, they need to see it, then that's a different story. But otherwise, as long as you have the content out there, be it audio or otherwise, that's the main thing. So Don't feel pressured. There used to be a lot more considerations around video, like the amount of bandwidth and storage space that it took, seeing what's behind you, in your environment, in your home, perhaps. But a lot of that has been rectified now, because we have faster internet connections, better computers. We have this virtual green screen stuff. So it just doesn't really matter. And every computer has a pretty good webcam, so we don't need to worry about being embarrassed or putting something out that it's just not good quality, because that's a consideration as well. If you're going to make yourself look bad by going on video, well, then don't do it. I used to tell people that, but now, we can touch it up pretty good, so it's not a big concern. So It's certainly an option, and I recommend at least doing it for social media.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you're consulting people as far as their podcast strategy is concerned, obviously we just talked about how podcasts have evolved from being really audio only to now a lot of them are doing more of the video as well. What's your thoughts on, I've heard this being said that, treat your podcast like almost like a TV show or a talk show, that kind of thing. What's kind of like your recommendation, especially with the clients that you work with, as far as the format in which they should do their podcasts?
Mm-hmm. Valuable content for your audience, you can never go wrong keeping that in mind. So through the lens of who are you trying to reach, create something valuable for them. Format-wise, like we don't get into too much of nitpicking about how it should be done, because the thing about this kind of stuff is I've heard differing opinions over the years. It's hard to quantify. It's hard to get data to say that one thing works better than another. But something that we can always rely on is valuable content. So you want it to be of a minimum quality, like the audio quality should sound good. Otherwise, people will just turn it off. But aside from that, don't get too stuck in the weeds of how you're presenting it. You can do a structure. You could perhaps have some segments on your show, that type of thing. But valuable, concise, clear, useful content for your audience is the number one thing that I would say is what matters when you're creating your podcast.
Yeah. That's good stuff for sure. And, you got people out there that recommend, how to capture an audience, how to keep an audience. Do you guys help with any of that, or is this really just about those simple things? Make sure that they can hear you, they can see you, and it's decent quality at minimum. What would you say about that?
Mm-hmm. We do a bit of coaching in terms of how you're actually putting your podcast out in the world. So there are different things to consider when it comes to growth, like whether it's how you write your descriptions, interacting with your audience, connecting with other guests, repurposing that kind of thing. But yeah, so what was the question? I totally went off track.
Yeah, just no problem, no problem. Yeah, basically just your recommendation on the formatting, but also the fact is like whether someone should do certain things to keep an audience
Oh yeah.
attention, like if there's more of a long form podcast, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sorry. Engaging content for sure. Have your own interests kind of come out there, but yeah, valuable content, clear and concise. You don't want to be going all over the place in terms of like stuff that's not relevant to them.
Right.
So value the listener's time for sure would be a big one when you
Yeah.
think about that. Like what's actually useful to them. You can't go
Yeah.
wrong thinking about everything through that lens.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you work with health and wellness, I guess, entrepreneurs that want to create a podcast. Is that how you guys started with that type of group of people that you focused on, or did you kind of evolve into realizing that was the best niche for you guys?
It's sort of found us in a way. So in the beginning, we were just doing anything for anyone. And a couple of years ago, I started working with a business consultant to help grow the business. And he said, well, who is your ideal client? Because we've been doing
Mm,
marketing and wasn't really working. And he said, well, who are you trying to talk to? And I said, I don't know. We're just running some ads for people that need a podcast editor. And he said, well, that's not how you should do it. So he said, let's look at your clients and let's see who are your best clients. And if we can identify those, we could go find more of them. We could start to understand them and provide a service that would help them. So we found that a lot of our clients just happen to be in this health and wellness space in some way, are our best clients. So he said, well, why don't we go towards that? We already know a lot of the problems that they're facing and how to help them. There can be
right.
synergy working with more of these people. So it just makes sense. So yeah, it was an evolution. At the beginning, we were just doing anything for anyone, a la carte type work. And then we developed this kind of single package that's just for these people and we can help them the best. So that's a relatively recent development.
Wow. And have you already started seeing the results of making that shift, that it's got better quality and people are, their needs and things like you mentioned? Are you seeing more traction? That's the clients more sticky with that already?
Yeah, it's a totally different mindset when you know what you offer and who is the perfect fit for it. Like
Right.
you shouldn't be questioning when someone comes to work with you. Is this good? Can we make some changes to give them what they want because they don't quite want what we offer? No, it's here's what we want. Here's what we offer. Here's the perfect client. And when you have that match, it's great.
Yeah.
So we've been seeing some success there already, and I just enjoy it better because I do feel passionate about that industry. I've seen what our clients are doing to help people out in the world and help them live better lives, and that feels good to me. And
Yeah.
then as I start connecting with people, it's a lot easier to refer connections and things like that because, say, I know someone in my network who specializes in writing for health and wellness people, for example. So, someone I talk to needs a writer. Well, I have someone right here who's perfect at that, or they can be guests on each other's shows. So, I find there's a lot more efficiency there with that type of thing, having focused on this niche.
Yeah. And you guys position yourself as the editor along the way as they grow and whatnot. What would you say some of the key benefits is for your clients working with you that they can get from having a partnership working with your company?
hmm Yeah, well, some of it would be, let's say, more on the general side, like using an editor at all versus doing it yourself. With us being in this niche, we understand the type of people that we're working with, so we know what they need and we can help them. We understand the content, so we'll say if we're writing or editing, we kind of know what they're talking about, so there's less chance for errors and things like that. But overall, people like this, a lot of our clients are solopreneur, entrepreneur types. They have better things to be doing in their business. And people who perhaps don't realize there was an option to even outsource, they could be spending 4 or 5 hours a week editing their show. And really, they have a lot better things to do. They could be serving their clients. They could be getting an exponential return on their time by automating other things in their business. So it's a really easy thing to outsource is this podcast production. So our type of clients they value their time. They need that time freed up, and we're a professional option for them. We take quality very seriously, so they can trust that, hey, like today I have nothing. Tomorrow I'm starting with this editing team, this production team, and I have a ton of hours off my plate, and I can go focus on these other things in my business. So that's the huge thing that we like to offer these people, and also just we add in this component of growth coaching as well, because that's a big thing. If you're using a podcast to try to grow your business, generate leads and revenue, you're trying to grow your audience, and a lot of people don't really know if that's happening, if they're doing the right thing, if there's something else they need to think about. So we add that in there because, again, we found through talking to our ideal client, this was very important to them. It's not just doing a podcast, but knowing I'm taking the right steps to grow this moving forward. So that's something that we offer that is a special thing for them. You're muted.
Looks like I'm muted again. I'm trying to mute so I don't have a lot of background noise, and then when it's time for me to talk, I got to remember. So I'm sure there's not a magic pill about this, or you'd be talking about it. But what is one of a lever that you would recommend people pulling to help grow their audience? Is there something you can recommend to people out there?
Yeah, I actually typically talk about this in like I have 4 different pathways for growth, so I can just recap them very quickly. This is my framework for it. So they would be optimize. Yeah. So we have optimize, connect, repurpose, and promote. The optimize part is like the SEO side of things. So making sure your descriptions are substantial enough in your episodes, having proper keywords in your episode title, your podcast name, that kind of thing. The connect portion is recognizing that this is about people. So that's both having guests on your show, if that's the type of show you do, being on other people's podcasts. That's a great way for connecting, getting links out there, meeting new people. And then the other portion of the people part is your audience. So interacting with these people on social media, engaging with them, responding to their questions quickly. Okay. There's a huge component, obviously, because people are the ones you're trying to do business with.
Right.
When we get to repurpose, and again, we're talking in terms of 4 pathways for podcast growth. Repurpose is something I touched on a bit earlier, is you can get a big ROI from your podcast by turning it into other forms of content. So if you're a podcaster, you just have to think about doing your recordings, whether it's solo or interview. You can turn this into blog posts, emails, social media clips, courses, book, all kinds of things. And you can delegate or automate all this stuff. So really you just focus on your episode and you have a ton more content in different formats that can come from it. So that's massive for growth and the ROI that you get. And the final one would be promote. So this is actively promoting either through paid or unpaid means. Paid could be like sponsoring email newsletters of other people who have an audience already. Could be digital ads. There are ads in podcast apps, that sort of thing. And then the unpaid would be like Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, interacting with people on social media, going to in-person events, that type of thing. But
Nice.
Those would be the 4 ways that I look at how to actually promote and grow a podcast.
Beautiful, man. Great content. If for those of you who are watching and looking at trying to do a podcast, especially if you're in the health and wellness space, you should definitely reach out to Joel and his company. That's a man that knows what he's talking about when he can break down 4 different pillars in like less than 2 minutes and give you details. That's someone who's done it. I can tell, and that's someone who knows what he's talking about for sure. Now, Joel, I'm going to put on the screen here, eastcoaststudio.com. Is that where people can find you guys and reach out to you and see if they can work with you or not?
Absolutely. Yes, that's perfect. eastcoaststudio.com. And I'll throw out here as well that I do have a completely free gift for people who do have a podcast they might enjoy. So when we're thinking about growth of the audience, we want to have certain fundamentals in place. And a big one that I mentioned was audio quality. That's one of the top reasons people will turn off a podcast and just not come back. They've got to be able to hear it clearly. That can be a bit of a wild card when you're interviewing guests. So what we have is a guest prep sheet, and it's some tips you can send to a guest ahead of time to help ensure they get the best audio recording quality when they join on your interview. So we have a completely free guest prep sheet, and that's at eastcoaststudio.com/guest prep. You just head there and you can grab that sheet for free, customize it, and start sending that to your guest. Get optimal audio quality and continue your podcast growth.
You said it was eastcoaststudio.com/guest prep?
Guest prep, yep.
Gotcha. Let me make sure we get that for everybody up here on the screen. Is that right?
Beautiful, yeah.
Perfect. So, guys, grab that free gift. if you're thinking about doing a podcast, obviously having something like that in place would be huge. So you guys can help have more quality. And like Joel says, the audio is very, very, very key. If not, people are going to turn away because they need to be able to hear you, right? And hear you with some good quality behind that, right? Joel, great insight on these things. I think I'm gonna want to have you back. Maybe we can do a longer format next time around because you got some great insights. Maybe we can do even a discussion board with some others as well when it comes to this field. And that way we can really dive a little bit deeper. Maybe we can even do a shared master class or something for those that might be interested in learning more about how to have a more of a productive and quality podcast. Hopefully you shared everything that you wanted to share. Is there anything else that we can include here?
Nope, that's great, Frankie. I appreciate it. And I like what you're suggesting here. We can certainly have additional conversations or something bigger. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing all this insight with us. For those of you who are watching, thank you guys for tuning in to Be My Guest podcast. Till next time, we'll see you on the other side. You've been watching Be My Guest podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to be a guest on our podcast, go to BeMyGuestPodcast.com. That's BeMyGuestPodcast.com.